And thanks for joining us for another installment of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host and Master Gardener intern, Tinisha Shade-Spain. And we have a great show lined up for you tonight. As always, we're going to be taking your calls, and also we've got some great show and tells from our panelists who are here joining us tonight. So let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their expertise and what they're into, and then we'll jump into the show and tell items. So we'll start down here with you.
Hi, I'm Karen, and I'm a private gardener in the Peoria area.
Wonderful.
I'm Dave Ploussard, and I'm from Hare Nursery in Peoria.
Wonderful.
And I'm Ella Maxwell. I also work at Hare's, and my expertise is perennials, trees, and shrubs.
Perennials, trees, and shrubs. Okay, so as promised, the show and tells that we've got tonight, we're going to just go ahead and jump right in. So Karen, what did you bring for us?
Well, I wanted to talk about your spring projects of things to still be working in the yard that I think still need attention. You get that in-between time period in your gardening where you've kind of cleaned up stuff and then we wait for the weather for that next surge of work in the yard. And one thing I wanted to point out to work on is stripping off your bagworms off of your evergreens or whatever plants you find them out in the yard right now. So hanging off, this was a juniper in a parking lot, and it has bagworms, and it's an insect. We don't usually start talking about them until June, around Father's Day, when they hatch out. And the reason I'm talking about them now is like I said, kind of that in-between job for spring of cleaning up the yard. The thing is, typically about 50% of these bags are going to be females. And within that bag will then be a black structure that was the body of the female from last year, and she is filled with eggs. Now, I was seeing some information that past years with extreme cold winters that we get a better kill rate of the eggs not making through the winter. But the thing is, you've got to realize that these are all over on the plant. So if this is lower down and it was covered by snow, all of these eggs would be all protected and fine to hatch out. So cleaning them up now, then you're not going to have the problem come Father's Day of them hatching out and starting to eat on stuff.
So when you pull them off, is there any special way that you're supposed to get rid of them?
Well, you want to just dispose of them or burn them.
Okay.
So they don't hatch. But it seems like during the growing season, they're horribly hard to pull off. Mm-hmm. It seems like after the winter, you can get that connective kind of silks to snap off. But during the summer, they're harder to pull off. You sometimes break your plant.
And after they've hatched, if you pull them off, you want to smash them or put them in a sealed container.
I must not have been clear.
Because in the summer, they will, if you threw them in the garbage can, they could literally crawl out of it. So you need to smash them or something.
Well, you still could burn them.
Or you can burn them.
But really, they got to go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Dave, what'd you bring us?
I brought forsythia, and I'm going to take it out of the vase here and kind of hold it this way because in my yard I have a forsythia. It's 6 feet tall, and right around the base of it, just like kind of what I'm trying to show like here, is a band of about 6 inches of forsythia flowers, and nothing's flowering up above. And that is because of the hard winter that we had. We had winter with 20, I think in our area it was like 21 below, maybe even 27 below, something in that area. So a lot of the flower buds were killed, but the snow covered the lowest part of the bushes, and therefore those flowers were protected. So they are blooming now, where the rest of the plant, the flower buds are dead, they're not going to bloom, and many of our plants are going to be affected. Roses, you may see some tops of your roses may be killed back, and there may be other plants as well that may either not be flowering or they may not be growing because of the winter kill that we had. Snow is a wonderful insulator, so wherever there's snow covered, generally those plants are going to be fine.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. All right, Ella, what did you bring?
Well, these kind of wilted a little, but this is my favorite spring blooming perennial. This is Helleborus, and you can see that they kind of have pendulous flowers. There are some more upright varieties, but I have really found that they do well for me in my garden. I thought they were hard to grow, but they're really not. Once they don't like a lot of wet areas, but they can come in a variety of colors here. I've got kind of a yellow, more of a cream, kind of a red. I have a darker purple. And then the other little bulbs right here is one of my favorites. This is a grape hyacinth, and I've got one with the little bulb on it right here. But what's neat about these grape hyacinths is this is Muscari latifolia. This is a single leaf. Instead of that kind of grass-like foliage that comes up in the fall, you just get a single leaf, and they can kind of naturalize. So they can make seed and spread. But
Those are
this
really
is
pretty.
one of my favorite little bulbs that's blooming in my garden right now.
Very pretty, and I like this too. I like this color. So do these like sun, shade? What are their
It's more of
preferences?
a afternoon shaded
Okay.
type of flowering plant, and of course they just bloom in the spring, and then they have really stiff evergreen kind of like foliage.
Very pretty. Okay, thank you very much. So as promised, it's spring, we are on the road. DJ visited another familiar face that you see here often on the show, Kent Miles, and take a look at what he's doing to get ready for spring.
Hi, this is Kent Miles from Illinois Willows, and right now we're in our barn and we're going to plant lilies. This is what we're going to plant the lilies in. This is a bulb crate, and this is how we get our lilies from Holland. They're shipped in a crate, and we don't plant in the soil, we plant in a bulb crate. So we line the bulb crate with newspapers to keep the soil mix in the bulb crate so it doesn't come out. So what we do now is we just go ahead and line them up. So these are the bulbs. This is a variety. It's a double yellow oriental. It has a vase life of 7 to 10 days. This is going to be a 3 to 5 blooms on the stem. And so during this process, kind of just line them up in rows. So we've got about 1 to 2 inches of medium on the bottom. And then we go ahead and line them up, and then we'll go ahead and cover them. So when you plant lilies like we do with the volume that we do, it takes up less space than if you were to plant them out in flower beds. Bulbs, these lilies are just going to be a one-time shot. They don't get saved. So what we're doing is we're putting on about 4 to 5 inches of mix on top. We'll go ahead and we'll water this in, and then we'll put them in the walk-in, and they'll stay in the walk-in for at least a minimum of 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And what they're going to do at that time is they're going to form a large root system and a stronger stem when they emerge from the mix. So we've got this all full. We'll just pretend that it was watered in, and we'll go in the cooler with it. And what we'll do is we'll just stack them. These are new lilies that just came in yesterday. We've got yellows and pink. So you've got generally around, they're a 14 to 16 centimeter bulb, and those are going to produce a 3 to 5 bloom flowering stem. And we get shipments every 2 weeks of crates. So we're going to be doing about 10,000 stems this year. And that's how we do our lilies.
Thanks so much to Kent for sharing his time with us. And we've got a call. CJ in Urbana has a question about bulbs. CJ, are you there?
I am.
Hi, go
Thanks
ahead.
for taking my. Hi, I was just calling to find out when is the best time to plant my canna bulbs.
Well, I think what we just saw on the show there, you can start your cannas the way that he did his lilies inside now, and then after danger of frost, you could put them out, because that's the way I also do my dahlias. I kind of pre-sprout them, and then they'll come out of that soil, and I'll put them into the ground after they've come up a bit. What do you guys think?
Well, if you don't want to go to that trouble, like probably most gardeners just want to plant them in the ground. So as soon as the danger of most of the frosts are done, you can plant them in the ground. So I would probably do it 1st of May, maybe.
Concur? All right, we have a consensus? Okay, wonderful.
Sounds good.
All right, let's go through with a round of questions. Karen, we'll start with you. Judy Stallings wrote in on Facebook, when is the ideal time to plant overseed grass in bare areas of the lawn from winter kill? What are your thoughts?
Well, the old time talk about planting of grass seed is with the last snow of spring. So it's really telling you want to do that early. So overseed early. The thing you've got to watch out for is that in spring, if we trend then dry, you're going to have to keep it a little bit more moist. Because some years we say fall is a better time to overseed or reseed, but it seems like our falls have been tending dry some years, so it's a toss-up.
So nowish?
Now, yes.
That's a good answer.
Now's a fine time.
Okay, perfect. All right, Dave, we're going to you. This comes from, well, there's no name on this one. My garden gets a lot of purslane every year. I pull it out by hand and brushed weed be gone on individual plants. How do I kill this alien monster?
Well, I'm with you because I have a lot of purslane myself. One interesting thing is you can harvest it to eat it. Ella likes to eat her weeds like that, but most people, really the best thing to do is to get it before it gets very big. If it's small and tiny, you can go ahead and rogue it out, you can hoe it out, but if you wait till it gets bigger, when you go to hoe or cut off the plants and you just leave them laying there, they will sprout again. So if you do weed, you've got to get them away from the soil and put them on the compost pile is what I do. There are some pre-emergents you might be able to use, but you can find them at the stores, but you need to read the label for one to make sure it's good for purslane to prevent it from even germinating. And then the more important thing is it safe to put around the plants that you have growing that you don't want to hurt, because you can't just take any pre-emergent herbicide that prevents seeds from germinating and put them around anything. They have to be labeled so you know it's safe for the plants that you want to use. And the other thing that I do is that I do spot spray them with Roundup in my garden, but you've got to be very careful that when you're spraying in your garden, you're not getting that Roundup on anything that you don't want to kill.
Okay. Ella, do you have some purslane recipes you want to share?
Well, actually, it's a stir-fry vegetable is what it is.
Okay.
So you can, yeah, it's good. Just a little oil, some salt, pepper, maybe some spices, and it just wilts down, and it's a little fleshy.
So eat it. There you go.
there you
That's
go.
the answer to your problem.
That's right. Take it to the farmer's market.
All right, question for you, Ella, about peonies.
Yeah.
I have a standard pink, not me, the person who wrote in. I have a standard pink peony about 5 years old. I have a circle grid cage that it grows through. Every year when in full bloom, a rainstorm will beat it down and break the stems at the cage. I noticed that the peonies out in the country that are not caged seem to pop back up after a rainstorm with little or no damage. Is it best not to cage them? From Robin.
Okay, Robin, what I'd say is you probably should think about the cages, and I brought several different kinds here. So our traditional grid is like this, and it might be that you're not bringing it up high enough under the flowers. So most of these have some ability to raise or lower them depending on, you know, what you have. And you want to keep this within maybe 6 inches from the flowers so they don't really have a chance to snap over. But a lot of people are just going to use a large ring to kind of hold them up, and I don't believe that they would snap off with a ring like this. And then there's a couple new designs out here that kind of more give you a more natural look. It's not like it's being bound in a circle. So you might want to think about something like that. But what I'd really recommend, Robin, is enjoy the flowers as a cut flower inside. Take off about 1/3 of them and just enjoy them while you have them, because they don't really last that long.
Okay. All right, we're going to go to line 3. Mary in Springfield with a question about clover. Mary, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right, what's your question?
Well, my backyard does not like to grow grass. It's fairly shaded. I have taken down a couple of trees, so I'm getting a little more sun back there. but I'm thinking of putting clover out there as a kind of a ground cover. And I'm wondering if it will actually grow in a partial sun. And I don't know whether to use like white Dutch or micro clover or what I should do.
Most of your clovers are for shady or sunny areas. I think there's a red clover that might take some partial shade, but you may want to consider a different plant other than clover based on how much shade that you have, because it really is more of a sun plant.
Anybody else? Guys all agree? Want to weigh in on that one?
I think what you could do is use a shady grass seed with some of the white clover and then just see how it goes this year. And definitely, I think you'll have something, and that's your goal.
The biggest issue is what's causing the shade. And you said you took a couple trees down. It also depends on how many roots you have and the remaining trees, because they are really competing quite a bit with whatever you're trying to grow there. So that's going to be your biggest limiting factor, is what is left and how much root system you're going to be dealing with on the remaining trees.
Okay. All right. We're going to go to Susan in Springfield with a question about spice bush. Susan, are you there?
Hi, yes. My question, we are very much interested in pollinators and especially spice bush swallowtails. And we'd love to get some spice bushes for our yard, but I understand I need a male and a female for flowering and for berries. How do I tell at the nursery, like especially now, trying to find them? How do I tell if I've got a male and female? And also, how far apart can they be planted and still be able to fertilize each other?
Great question.
Oh gosh, I didn't know that spice bush had male and females.
Is that Lindera?
It is Lindera, and I have Lindera at home, and I must have a male and a female because I get little baby Linderas in my timber. So I just plant quite a number of them. And once the flower does form, it would be like a holly. You should be able to tell. If you see yellow in the flower, that's probably a male because of the pollen. I don't know. That's what the internet's for.
Most of the plants that require a male, female are going to be labeled at a nursery. So when you go to buy them, you should know whether you're getting a male or a female. There are not that many plants that you purchase that have separate sexes. Usually most of them are single sex or have the same sex on both plants, and so it's not really an issue. So I would check, especially on the labels in any of those plants that you're buying that need a male and a female.
And find the nursery staff and make sure you ask them. Okay, Dan in Urbana with a question about creeping Charlie. Go ahead, Dan.
Yes.
Hi, go ahead with your question.
What's a good way to get rid of creeping Charlie? I don't want him.
Simple enough.
Well, you can't hand pull it because that just doesn't work.
I've tried that.
Sure.
Yeah,
And it's not one to eat either, so.
Strike those two off the list.
I use Trimac, an herbicide that has 3 different weed killers in it. That's what I find the most effective, and spraying it earlier in the season too. The longer you wait into the summer, the more difficult it is to kill. So right now would be a good time, when it's just starting to grow, would be a good time to treat it.
Okay.
Well, and then a lot of these chemicals, a second application sometimes is helpful if the label has how many days later, because a hard to kill weed, sometimes if the weather changes and it starts growing really quickly, that second hit of the chemical, then you can get a better kill.
Right, yeah.
Or better complete kill.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're going to Tom in Decatur with a question about a cherry tree. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you very much for the call. Hey, I got about 3 years ago, at the end of the season time, I got some Bing cherries because I love the Bing cherries. But only thing is they said some trees had to have pollinators, some didn't. Unfortunately, what they had in stock left over was 4 pollinators and just 2 regular ones. So the trees are doing beautiful. They're all dwarfs. But the only thing is they have hundreds and hundreds
must be growing sweet cherries because your pie cherries generally are self-pollinating. So with the sweet cherry, you really are going to need to plant another one. And if you've had a few cherries, you probably got an idea of what the fruit looks like. If it's a dark cherry, then you may want to look for one that is a little bit lighter in color, but you basically need to get a completely different variety. Let's say what you planted was Bing, then you need to get something that's not a Bing. And the gold cherries probably are the best pollinator for other sweet cherries, so you may want to consider getting a gold cherry so that it will pollinate the one that you have.
And they also have to bloom at the same time. I had a friend who that was his biggest problem. He had 2 different sweet cherries, but they never bloomed at the same time, so there was no way for the cross-pollination to happen.
That's tough.
He cut them down.
The end. Dawn and Sullivan with a question about holly bush. Go ahead, Dawn.
How do we tell the difference between the male and female holly bushes? We don't have any red berries, but we would like to buy a bush in order to have berries on our non-berry bushes.
Well, what we were just talking about that the male and female flowers, and we're coming just really soon on when you're going to be able to tell that because they'll be blooming in spring. So you want to look for they're right now clusters real tight to the stem. So you want to watch for little white flowers to open up. When those white flowers open up on the holly, you want to see if they have 4 white stems with these little yellow things on the end. That's a male flower. So you would probably then you don't have the female there. The female flower, there's still a female flower. It'll have 4 white petals. The male has 4 white petals. But the female has no yellow things on the ends of these 4 little white pieces. It has a middle, which is the ovary, kind of a swollen middle area down in the 4 petals. So you want to wait till it blooms, and then you can tell if you have a male or female plant. The other thing you'll want to check for is your stems. Are the stems kind of purpley and square, or are the stems more light green, limey, and round? Light green and round, that's probably the China series of holly. If it's more square, that's the Meserve hollies. So like the Princess, Prince, those types of holly, because you need the same series to then cross-pollinate.
Right, and Dawn, the best thing is that now the growers have put a male and female together in the same pot. They call them the royal family, the Will and Kate. They've got all kinds of great names, but that way for sure you know you have both sexes.
It's assuming you're talking about the evergreen hollies. If you're talking about a deciduous holly, then that's a different story, where if it's one that's not evergreen and drops all of its leaves, then you have deciduous hollies, and they don't usually put those in the same pot.
Yes, they do now.
Oh, they do now?
Yeah, you can get one.
We learned.
Yeah, that's right. Who thought that hollies could be so interesting?
You guys have had some really tough questions tonight, too. I'm glad that they tried to stump you, but we got a good group here. Okay, we've got a couple minutes. Let's try to get one more in. Karen, we'll go to you. Okay. When should pre-emergent fertilizer be applied to the lawn, and when would be the best time to plant new grass? So we kind of touched on this, but if you want to expand a little bit.
Right, so David's question is about the best time, so we kind of talked about that with Judy's question earlier about spring, now, get the seed down. David's question, though, he asked about a pre-emergent fertilizer, and that's kind of a little bit misleading of, well, what are you asking? Because when you say pre-emergent, we as nursery people think about pre-emergent herbicide, so that's going to keep your weed seeds, specifically we're trying to keep crabgrass from germinating later in the early summer. So a pre-emergent herbicide, typically you cannot use that and then overseed or seed grass. So the thing to think about is look at the labels, and usually you have a 3-month window. If you put a pre-emergent herbicide with a fertilizer, without fertilizer, 3 months it'll keep grassy stuff from germinating. So either look at the labels and which way you're going to be going with your project.
Okay. We've got about a minute. So I always ask at the end here lately, what are you guys doing at home to get your beds and gardens and things ready? Are you doing soil amendments? Are you, tell me what you guys are doing, because we want to know what the pros are doing so we can do it, right? Right. So, this was not planned, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. No, this is one of my favorite tools, and the idea is now's the time to get your tools in shape, clean them up, oil them, sharpen them, so that you're ready to go, because there's weeds out there, and this is a great weeder.
Wonderful. Anybody else? What are you guys doing to get ready?
Well, I have a lot of cool season weeds. There's chickweed and henbit, pennyroyal, so a lot of things that are starting to come up now and starting to flower. You want to get rid of those right away, and do not let them go to seed, because then next year you'll have a whole new bumper crop. So get your weeds under control and start right away.
All right. That is the note of the day. Get the weeds under control before they bloom. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week on Mid-American Gardener. Good night.